So let's talk about INULA. Well, you may have seen or heard some of the uproar and upset about how the rework of Nagash has impacted INULA and the other sleep heroes. And in fact, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you watch T-Bone's video explaining and showing how the new Nagash kind of makes INULA fucking useless. Definitely go watch it. I'll leave a link in the description. This video is intended to build on that commentary so that hopefully we can gain a bit of momentum, but this video also stands on its own a bit. And by the way, I'm showing you on the screen some of my fights in arena featuring INULA, so I hope you enjoy. You have something to look at while I talk. I want to tell you a story, my personal story about INULA. I love INULA. She's actually one of the heroes, when I think about it, that made me enjoy the game. I remember when I was starting out in arena, it was a very different place, but the thing that hasn't changed is I didn't have as many heroes as a lot of the top players. I definitely didn't have the same number of resources as them. And for me, INULA was a game changer because for the first time, I could use a hero that was cheap to build, and I could take on these teams and I could win. And you see in the video that's on the screen right now, I'm fighting someone who was the leader of the top English-speaking guild in the game at the time. And in another fight, I'm fighting against someone with a 550 INULA. Because she was just such an awesome hero. Literally just one of the most brilliant, fantastic heroes that I ever played with in this game. And I noticed that after I started making these videos featuring INULA so much and talking about her, saying she was my most reliable offense team, I started to see her more and more in the arena defense. It was kind of the moment for a rare to shine. And now that we've kind of talked about the rise of INULA, it's time to talk about the fall of the empire of INULA. First of all, this is a long time back. They made the PvE bosses and the raid bosses immune to crowd control. So some of the players might not have been in the game back when this was the case, but used to be able to stun and sleep and freeze the raid bosses, and obviously that also made them fucking useless, and you could get really high scores, so they put an end to that. And that meant that sleep then became the domain of PvP. And INULA was actually everywhere. She was a huge nightmare until one day they introduced a hero that changed everything. And that hero, you may be surprised, guess who it was? Put it in the comment. That hero was a blue hero. That's your hint. Are you done? That hero was Karagon. He put Soul Link on all of the allies at the start of the battle, which meant you couldn't use a fast INULA to sleep all of your heroes. And this was a huge problem, and then you started seeing those Karagon teams more and more, and those INULA teams less and less. Actually, I remember talking to a guildmate, and he told me that Karagon was one of the heroes he really enjoyed using because it finally allowed him to win against those really annoying INULA defense teams. And another factor for the fall of INULA is the rise of other forms of crowd control. If you look at some of the most popular heroes that they've released in the last year or so, you'll notice that they have something in common. If you look at Galmaris, Tycho, Necros, Morena, you can see that they all do some form of crowd control. And to be honest, kind of went back as far as Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus and Claus were a really powerful duo back in the day, because if you had both of them, Mrs. Claus could put sleep on all of your enemies. And you also notice these are all legendary heroes. And it's common that once you have one of these heroes, since they're legendary and quite powerful, you don't really need a second crowd control hero in your team. Or you could have one, but they're likely to do other things beside crowd control. For example, Necros does a hit as well, and he prevents resurrection. So that meant there wasn't really a place for INULA anymore, right? When Tycho came out and Tycho was everywhere, the INULA teams were pretty much gone. And the fourth factor for the decline of INULA is where we are now, which is they redid the dragons, so there's not a single dragon that will keep the enemies asleep. So those are the four, in my view. First of all, making PvE immune to crowd control. Second, Karagon. Third, the legendary crowd control heroes pushing INULA out. And fourth, the dragon waking everything up. So I won't say it's really the fault of the dragon per se, and the dragon is the issue I want to talk about next. But you can see that from a developer point of view, what I interpret is they've really neglected the sleep status, and they're devaluing it to the point that it's a dead status that no one is going to care about anymore. The same way that kind of right now no one cares about the colorblind status, and they're trying to make it more important. And now, okay, let's talk about Nagash, because we can also talk about why is Nagash not really used, right? And we can assume that in the beginning he was used. But what happened? Heroes happened. Nephra, Alexander, and then I think two key heroes that made Nagash something that needed to be countered, which was Martin and Helica. Because those heroes heal a lot. And Martin in particular is immune to poison. There was a big poison meta in those days, and Martin could be immune and he would just keep on healing himself. That meant you had to use Haron, the purple dragon, put heal block. The second reason I would say is the difficulty of the raid bosses. Again, as I said, they've made the raid bosses more difficult. They made them immune to crowd control, and there was also a point where they increased all of the stats of the raid bosses. And that meant that as you go to higher raid bosses, you needed to play around with the speed, because the fastest way to lose a raid boss battle is to have the raid boss take 2 or 3 turns in a row. And they also introduced the Witch Rift, which was a very difficult rift because you really need to go fast. And when you need to go fast, your best tool is Skyron. Third reason is also to do with the raid bosses. Because the raid boss stats were so powerful, you actually needed a dedicated healer. You couldn't just rely on using Nagash to heal your team and have the rest of the team be damage dealers anymore. The fourth reason I would say is because Haron became so popular, obviously, then you couldn't really do anything if you had Nagash on your own team. So you needed a cleanser and a healer. a dedicated cleanser and healer, and back then Spell Shield was very popular. Now it's also becoming popular again because of Arendelle and Luciet as well. But let's move on to the next reason, which is where we are now. The tavern incentivizes investments on a single dragon. And you can see people investing heavily into Haron, to a lesser extent into Vermin. That's what I'm doing now. So there's less room to play and pick and choose which heroes you want to use. It's not like, oh, okay, one day you feel like using Bastet, one day you feel like using Nagash. No, you make a decision and you say, I'm going to invest my resources, my gems, which are one of the most scarce resources in the game. And I'm going to invest in a specific dragon. And that means I'm probably going to use that dragon as much as possible to get the most use out of the resources that I invested. And the final reason is quite an unfortunate one as well, which is the reworked Nagash isn't very good. The heal is really weak at the 1-star level. And because we're not incentivized to level up lots of dragons, then the proof that we see is, well, the 1-star heal is terrible. So why would I invest resources into Nagash? So those are the factors leading, in my mind, to the decline of Nagash. Now we can look at the consequences of all of these changes. So, well, you might say, on the surface level, it's very easy, right? INULA's gone, Nagash is gone. But I think there's something deeper. Aside from the impact on war, crowd control, in my mind, is becoming the realm of the pay-to-play. Because give me a rare or epic hero who can consistently put crowd control on the enemy. I don't think there is one anymore. It was INULA. It was INULA and Orion and, the INULA type heroes. All of the other heroes at rare and epic level give 60% to land, 75% to land. They're not as reliable as a legendary hero. And that's an issue. But now I want to talk about why I believe this is an issue that affects everyone who plays this game. And it's because it restricts the play styles that we can use. Now, I've had questions before about play styles. What is a play style? A play style is how you play the game. It's the strategies that underpin the teams that you put together to go into battle. So the easy way to think about it is, when you go in, how are you going to win? Are you going to use snipers? Are you going to use AoEs? Are you going to use crowd control? Are you going to use dot? That's your playstyle. And by the way, if I look at the content that I make on this channel, in the last month, the best performing videos have been the event walkthroughs, where I show a free-to-play versus pay-to-play option to complete the Truffle event and the Night of Blood event. I'm showing you how you can use different heroes, different play styles to achieve the same objective. And I see my gear videos getting a lot of views, and the different ways that you can gear a hero also contributes to your play style. And YouTube tells me my channel is actually doing twice as well in the last month as it normally does. So thank you to everyone who supports. But I'm seeing that there is real interest in having different ways to play, and also bring a friend. Most people who watch are already subscribers, so it would be great if we could get some fresh blood watching this channel. And finally, my most popular series, which are old now, oldies but goodies, 3 ways to raid bosses, 3 ways to dust rifts, and I'm sure that is the way that a lot of you were introduced to my channel. And what I wanted to show in those videos was 3 different playstyles for each different PvE battle. Because what I wanted to say, what I wanted people to realize was you don't have to chase the heroes that your guildmates have, or you don't need to chase the heroes that the content creators have, or that you see in arena. You can do great things with the roster that you have. You can have so much fun playing the game in a different way. And even if you have those heroes, you can change it up. You can try different things. And that's fun. Or at least it is for me. That's fun. That's interesting. That's when you can learn from people. That's when you can realize the synergies between the different heroes. And one thing that you learn somewhere might be something that you can apply elsewhere. If you know that you're someone who likes to put Board Jester, which is a very underrated debuff, to control the number of raid boss turns, you can apply that maybe in a PvE event, or you can apply it in arena, or you can apply it in a rift. Or if you know that you enjoy using sleep, as I did, I used it to succeed in Inferno. So all of these different play styles, whether it's direct damage, sniper, AoE, debuffs, buffs, they're all things that add to the enjoyment of the game. And isn't that why we're here? Isn't this why we're all playing together instead of Candy Crush? We're here to learn from each other and have fun and discover different ways of using heroes. So why should we be using 1 dragon instead of 5, or 3 dragons out of 5? Why should we be killing one of the debuffs in the game? What is the point? Why should we making crowd control the realm of pay to play? It doesn't make sense. At least not to me. Anyway, so I'd love to hear what you think. And please leave a comment or a like. As I said before, if you all bring a friend, introduce this channel to someone new, we could get a lot more views, a lot more traction on this subject. I want to say again, T-Bone's video in this topic is fantastic. And it's great to see people speaking up for something that's close to them. So thank you so much for supporting once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.